Henry Lee Lucas was born on August 23, 1936, and passed away on March 13, 2001. He was an American citizen, originally from Blacksburg, Virginia, and was convicted by the state's highest court for multiple murders. Lucas once confessed to the Virginia police that he had killed more than 300 people between the mid-1970s and 1983. However, after re-evaluation by the Lucas Task Force, a more credible number was believed to be approximately 150. Nevertheless, the Texas prosecutor presiding over the case, Jim Mattox, considered this number to still be sensational and criticized the task force for conducting an ineffective investigation relying on hearsay. In 1998, then Governor of Virginia George W. Bush approved Lucas's death sentence. Although Lucas was accused in court of not committing the crimes alone with an accomplice named Otis Toole, it is undeniable that for some of the cases where he was convicted, Lucas could be regarded as the most prolific, brutal, and reckless serial killer in American history. Almost all pathological killers have a tragic childhood, and Henry Lee Lucas was no exception. It would be a miracle if a child could maintain psychological well-being under such circumstances. Born in Virginia on August 23, 1936, Lucas's father was disabled due to an accident and lost his ability to work. His mother was an alcoholic prostitute who possibly also used drugs. Lucas and his father were the targets of his mother's wrath when she was intoxicated. He grew up amidst her curses and beatings. The brutal abuse he endured was unimaginably terrifying, with his blind left eye serving as the best evidence. Even Lucas himself could not recall which beating caused it. Such beatings were like the daily homework assigned by teachers in class. When he was approximately 12 years old, Lucas suffered a severe head injury, another of his mother's deeds, which directly damaged his brain. This could very likely be the cause of his subsequent schizophrenia and other cold-blooded behaviors. The prolonged abuse left him completely devoid of compassion. As a child, Lucas enjoyed catching small animals, such as pigeons, white mice, and even cats and dogs, and then tortured them to death. He was accustomed to his mother's beatings, so he did not perceive the cruelty of his torture of small animals, and he could even derive satisfaction and pleasure from it. While observing those animals' futile struggles, he might not have contemplated that one day he would employ the same methods to torture humans. When his mother was in a good mood, she would dress Lucas up as a little girl and make him wear girls' clothing to school. Without a doubt, Lucas would be ridiculed by his classmates, which completely shattered a boy's self-esteem and confidence. Lucas's later bisexual tendencies can likely be traced back to this incident. What's even worse, his mother would entertain clients at home without avoiding her son and often forced Lucas to watch. This led to Lucas's abnormal sexual concepts. He believed that all sexual behavior should be as casual as what he frequently witnessed at home, so he did not feel the need to control his own sexual urges. This idea tortured Lucas for a long time, as he wondered why his mother could have casual sex with anyone, but he could not. Later, almost every reason for his murders was the same, because the other party would not have sex with him. After his arrest, Lucas told the police that his first murder occurred when he was 13 years old, when he attempted to rape a 17-year-old girl. The girl fought back desperately and Lucas strangled her. When he calmed down, he discovered that the girl was already dead. When recounting this incident, Lucas appeared smug, stating that he did not know the girl, and after killing her, he dragged the body to the woods by the river. However, the police were unable to determine the truth of this matter. They conducted an investigation in the area where Lucas lived as a child, but there had never been a case of a girl being murdered there. The police suspected that either Lucas deliberately mentioned the incorrect time and place, or it was a hallucination, as schizophrenia made it difficult for Lucas to distinguish between reality and fantasy. At the age of 23, Lucas seemed to have an opportunity to become a normal person. He met a girl named Sarah, and shortly after they became engaged. But his mother did not like Sarah. In fact, she opposed Lucas's relationship with any girl, hoping that her son would always be her toy. However, Lucas had grown up and had his own thoughts and was brave enough to resist. His mother realized that her influence over her son was diminishing, and if her son married another woman, she would no longer be able to control him. So she did everything possible to sabotage this marriage, and the end result was that Sarah believed it would be difficult to get along with such a strange mother in the future, so she left Lucas on her own. This incident marked a turning point in Lucas's life. In the police files, this was Lucas's first criminal record. Due to his girlfriend's departure, Lucas lost his mind in anger and has never recovered since. In an argument with his mother, Lucas strangled her and picked up a kitchen knife from the dining table, stabbing her body more than a dozen times. Then he raped his mother's corpse. This murder case was so cruel and aberrant that even the prosecuting lawyer, who did everything possible to send Lucas to the electric chair, had to admit that Lucas was indeed mentally ill. Lucas's lawyer presented his childhood experiences in court, and the judge and jury accepted the opinion of the defense's psychiatric experts that Lucas suffered from schizophrenia. The court announced that Lucas would spend 40 years in a mental hospital. With Lucas being admitted to a mental hospital, the noisy media gradually quieted down, and people thought that Lucas would spend the rest of his life there. Gradually, this madman was forgotten by people, but the actual situation was far from this. Lucas did not get rid of his madness, although he seemed normal on the surface. He only stayed in the mental hospital for 10 years. The doctors believed that he had regained his sanity, so Lucas was paroled. From then on, Henry Lee Lucas began his insane career of murder. Lucas drove his car and wandered on the highways of various states in the United States. He had almost no standards for the targets he was about to attack. From 10 years old to 79 years old, as long as they met Lucas alone on the highway, they were almost doomed. Lucas's favorite target was single women with car breakdowns on the highway. They were helpless and had no resistance, and they could be encountered almost every day. Seeing the broken-down vehicle, Lucas would stop the car, approach the victim under the pretext of helping, then stab them frantically with a knife, and finally rape their corpses, as if this was another murder of his mother. In 1976, Lucas met another madman, a transvestite named Otis Elwood Toole, and they met in Florida, where they began to travel together, becoming both lovers in a bisexual relationship and partners in murder. It was a combination that was both insane and terrifying. Lucas had a cruel, sadistic, and necrophiliac fetish, and he had also eaten the bodies of his victims, but he did not like cannibalism. Toole not only shared the same preferences as Lucas, but he was also a true cannibal, and many of the victims became his dinner. They killed without any particular method, and for a while, they liked to lay their victims across the highway and drive over them. This partnership lasted for 2 years. Incredibly, during such a long period, these two dangerous individuals did not end up eating each other. In 1978, the murderous partnership finally broke down. The reason was Toole's niece, Becky Powell. That year, Lucas met the 15-year-old Becky through Toole. The police have not been able to confirm whether Becky was involved in the murders of Lucas and Toole, and from Lucas's confession, it can be seen that at least many of their murders were carried out in front of Becky. However, since Becky is dead, all of this cannot be confirmed. And many of Lucas's far-fetched lies also make it difficult for the police to determine the truth. What is certain is that Lucas wanted the police to believe that Becky was their accomplice. For some unknown reason, perhaps Becky reminded Lucas of his former Sarah. Lucas was very attentive to Becky. As a result, the relationship between the three people became somewhat awkward. Lucas was bisexual, and for him, his closeness to Becky did not affect his attitude towards Toole. But for Toole, it was not the case. Toole was a homosexual, and Lucas's relationship with Becky made him both jealous and angry. When Becky and Lucas started living together, Toole finally could not bear it and parted ways with them. It seems to be destined that Lucas's relationships with women cannot last too long. Soon after, the police found the body of the 15-year-old girl, which was dismembered and stuffed into a pillowcase, abandoned in the wilderness. Like many victims they had hunted before, it is difficult to say whether it was Lucas or Toole who did it. However, according to Lucas's consistent attitude towards women, the police are more inclined to believe that Lucas killed Becky. Later, Henry Lee Lucas was arrested by the police purely by chance. In October 1982, the police in Texas were trying to find a missing widow. Soon after, the widow's body was found in the bush by the highway, but her handbag was not found. According to the witness who last saw the widow, the victim was carrying a handbag. The police speculated that the handbag must have been taken by the murderer. When the patrol police were checking passing vehicles, they found clues. In the back seat of a white man's car, the patrol police saw a similar handbag, so they conducted a routine check on the car owner. The car owner was named Henry Lee Lucas, strong and handsome, if not for his obvious disability in the left eye. In addition to the handbag, the police did not have other gains, but they found very dangerous knives in the trunk of Lucas's car. The police immediately detained him for carrying dangerous weapons. Lucas was taken to the police station. The police carefully checked the suspicious handbag and were disappointed to find that it did not belong to the victim's widow. Lucas's gas station receipts also proved that at the time of the widow's death, Lucas was still wandering aimlessly on the highway 200 miles away, and there was no chance to commit the crime. Lucas had nothing to do with this case. However, the weapon in the trunk of his car still made the police suspicious, and the police did not immediately release him, but temporarily detained him for further questioning. To the police's astonishment, before they initiated the new round of questioning, Lucas appeared impatient. He recounted his more than 2-decade-long murder experience, including an accomplice named Otis Elwood Toole. Thus, the legend of a deranged murderer shocked the world. Upon Lucas's arrest, Toole was also soon captured by the police. Lucas and Toole boasted about their murder experiences to the police, providing new case details almost daily. Their statements left the police dumbfounded. According to their own accounts, they had committed over 600 murders across 26 states in the United States, as well as in Europe and Japan. The vast majority of these 600 murders were beyond the reach of the police investigation. Lucas claimed they had committed crimes in Spain and Japan, but the police found no evidence of them ever leaving the United States. Lucas said he had killed a woman in Virginia, even providing her name. However, the police discovered that this female teacher was alive and well and had never heard of Lucas. Lucas stated that he had killed more than one hitchhiker in Texas in 1979, but the police determined that Lucas was not in Texas during that year. Apart from these false statements, many of the details Lucas provided regarding the murders closely matched the facts. He could name the victims, their occupations, where they were killed, what they were wearing at the time, and the nature of their injuries. Given Lucas's typical demeanor, the police also questioned the authenticity of these statements, considering that these circumstances had been reported in the newspapers. Perhaps Lucas remembered these details to deceive the police. However, some details provided by Lucas had never been disclosed by any media. Lucas seemed to relish playing this game of truth and falsehood with the police. At times, his testimony was completely off base, while at other times, he divulged some alarming situations to the police. He once mentioned that Toole had killed a 6-year-old child named Adam Walsh. There was indeed such a child on the police's missing persons list, so the police interrogated Toole about it. Toole initially admitted it, then denied it. When the police questioned Lucas again, Lucas was quite certain that the child had indeed been killed by Toole, as Toole had told him so. When asked for the details, Lucas claimed he could not recall them. Later, Lucas completely reversed his testimony, stating that Toole had not killed the child, and that it was just Toole bragging. Based on some details provided by Lucas, the police believed he at least had partial knowledge of the Adam Walsh case, and the investigation of this case proceeded intermittently for several years. Toole would no longer provide further information regarding this case, and Lucas's statements were a mixture of truth and falsehood, making it impossible for the police to grasp the full truth. By 1996, the police were able to confirm that Lucas was responsible for at least 6 of the 600 murders. Lucas led the police to his burial sites and dug up the bodies of the victims. There were another 200 murders that the police suspected were related to Lucas and Toole, but they could not be completely certain. Lucas was unwilling to provide more details, perhaps he really could not remember. If a murderer truly killed more than 200 people, it is unknown if he can recall each of victims clearly. Perhaps he is playing a game of hide and seek with the police, and those cases have nothing to do with him. Or perhaps, given Lucas's mental state, he simply imagined those cases and he believed them to be true. Regarding the other cases, the police found it difficult to determine if they actually occurred. Lucas once said wearily at the end of a long interrogation, "I don't want to say anything more. I will tell you more things after I am reborn." Are there more things? No one can answer this question. After more than a decade of imprisonment, the police no longer held any hope that Lucas could provide new crimes. When Lucas grew bored with his prison life, he would notify the detectives at the police station that he had remembered the circumstances of a certain victim. Most of the time, these recovered memories were his illusions or fabrications, but occasionally there were some things that piqued the police's interest. His purpose was simply to attract the attention of the police. He took such pride in his crimes that he was most worried about being forgotten by the police. The police were tired of his antics, but they could not ignore them. On September 15, 1996, Toole died in prison due to liver failure. Lucas finally told the police that Adam Walsh was indeed killed by Toole. Toole had taken him to the location where the body was buried. The body was in a very narrow grave, which made me feel very nauseous. He disclosed the location where the body was hidden, and the police actually found the child's body there. No one can explain the motive for the crimes of this most notorious serial killer pair in criminal history. If one were to believe their own words, their motive is simply terrifying, simply because they wanted to kill. Lucas claimed that many cases were carried out at the behest of the hand of death, which is undoubtedly a manifestation of schizophrenia. In fact, whether it is Lucas or Toole, they should both be classified as typical schizophrenic abnormal serial killers. Legally speaking, they should be considered to have limited capacity for performing civil juristic acts. They can selectively hunt for victims and remain at large for extended periods, which is sufficient to demonstrate that they possess considerable normal behavioral capabilities. However, their cruel hunting methods for the victims, abnormal sexual orientations, and even cannibalism all reveal their mental state as being different from that of ordinary people. To sum it up in the words of an ordinary citizen interviewed on the street at the time, "They are crazy. I think they should all go to hell." After Lucas and Toole were arrested, their trials dragged on for a long time. Eventually, Lucas was sentenced to death, but after being transferred to Florida, he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, and his death sentence was commuted to life imprisonment. Toole died of illness in prison in 1996. On March 31, 1998, the Texas court sentenced Henry Lee Lucas to death and scheduled his execution for June 30th of the same year. However, in June, the President of the United States once again granted him a reprieve. Yet, in the end, Lucas was still executed. Today, the issue that concerns people the most is no longer the true motive for the murders committed by Lucas and Toole, but how many lives they have destroyed. At least 6 people, at most 600 people, these two vastly different numbers have left people with a mystery that may never be solved. The details of hundreds of murders confessed by Lucas are highly consistent with the actual circumstances of the cases, but there are also many details that are completely incorrect. Regarding the approximately 200 cases, this is the number that the authorities tend to believe. So what about the other 400 or so murders? Perhaps there is another perpetrator, or perhaps it is their own masterpiece. The truth is no longer important. What remains in people's memories is only Lucas's shocking defense in court. "I like to kill people. It's very ordinary, just like many people like to go for a walk. We just have different hobbies. If I have this need, I will go to the street and find someone at random.